Hello, welcome to a review of Chapter 3 Selecting, Refining, and Proposing a Topic for Research. So, what are the sources for research topics in education? I would recommend always, as teacher researchers, to start with personal experiences and personal interest. In order for us to conduct research in the schools where we teach or where we work, it is important that the topics that we investigate are meaningful to the practices that we are engaged in on a day-to-day basis. Of course, there are also other sources that can generate meaningful research topics, such as journals in the field, educational journals, such as existing literature, textbooks, or other books that address a specific instructional strategy or a specific leadership style that might be meaningful in schools. And finally, another important resource is the Education Index or the current index to journals in education. What other considerations might be important for us to consider as we are selecting a research topic for an educational issue? As I mentioned, personal interest and personal experience is important. It is also important, though, to consider whether the topic that we are planning to investigate and spend time with is really important and meaningful to invest time and energy into exploring further. There is also the quality of the newness of a research topic. Some hot topics in education right now is the whole notion about using the flipped classroom. Another hot topic in education is project-based or problem-based learning, which is receiving increased interest. A third area that is beginning to develop a high level of interest is related to the article that you read by Angela Duckworth, the whole notion of grit or perseverance. Um, Duckworth and others have a strong research field right now that documents that perseverance and grit actually are higher predictors of long-term academic achievement than GPA and SAT scores. If this were to be true, it might be meaningful for us to find out how we can teach perseverance or grit in the classroom. It's also important for us to look at the time requirements that it takes for us to investigate the topic that we have identified. We are primarily teachers, and when we engage in research, we become teacher researchers. So we have to consider whether the topic and the methodology that is best affiliated with the topic that we have identified is something that we can manage as we are doing other duties in the classroom or in the school setting. That leads directly to how difficult is the methodology that we'll be using. It also next goes into the monetary costs. While many professional researchers have access to funding to purchase assessment or other tools, hire substitutes or hire other co-investigators to do it, we in the classroom settings and in school settings most commonly have ourselves and do not have additional resources in order to do the type of research that often is done by professional researchers. And last but not least, can we comply with all the ethical issues and all the other procedural issues that we discussed in one of the earlier chapters related to doing good, solid research? I reference a couple of web pages here where you might also go if you are looking for sources for other hot topic in the field of education. Once we have identified a broad topic, we need to narrow it down so that it becomes manageable for us. This is one of the most important part in this phase of designing research. Many times we end up with a research topic that is way too broad and is unmanageable. We really, as we are looking at the research topic, cannot identify the data collection strategies that will help us answer the question. We cannot identify the right sample or the right participants that might help us answer the question. So it is really, really important that we clarify and reword unambiguously stated research topics in order for us to get a researchable problem. So let's just review some of the terminology related to research topic. The research topic is usually stated as a phrase. Many times, as I already mentioned, we end up with amorphous topics that are stated too vaguely and therefore cannot really be investigated. The problem is a refined topic, something that is clear, that is researchable, and ends up in a problem statement that is typically stated in the form of a sentence. It oftentimes begins with something like this: the purpose of this study is, this study set out to investigate. Could be a couple of ways that the problem statement typically is formulated. Then we end up with specific research questions that are the fundamental questions that we want to answer. Whenever we are done with the data collection and we have analyzed the data should be able to answer the research questions. At times, as Mertler gives example about in this chapter, we have a number of sub-questions that might help guide the research process. In quantitative research, we use hypotheses. In qualitative research, we do not. So let me first talk about what a hypothesis is. It oftentimes starts out with a null hypothesis, assuming that there is no difference between what was there and the new component that we are introducing. So for instance, 8th grade math teachers might want to consider if using a flipped classroom enhances student achievement on standardized tests. So the null hypothesis would say that there is no difference between the achievement that students receive, whether they are taught in the traditional way with teacher lectures and then some practice follow-up exercises afterwards, and the new method using a flipped classroom teaching strategy. A directional research hypothesis would say that students who achieve math instruction in a flipped classroom model achieve higher on standardized test scores than students who receive traditional instruction. Of course, then there could also be a non-directional research hypothesis that is basically saying that the statement of true expectations with no particular directions for the result. And then sometimes we are also talking about a theory and overall explanations of why things exist as they do. Let me just return to the question of the hypothesis for a second. As I mentioned, qualitative research does not use a hypothesis. It's because qualitative research does not set out to answer a specific research problem. It sets out to explore the perceptions, the meanings, or the experiences of the participant in the study. Where we end up as we are getting ready to conduct a qualitative research is what is called foreshadowed problems that are broadly stated research problems that may change as the investigation or as the research is actually conducted. Of course, in quantitative research, we use a number of variables. They help us understand relationship among them. So we have there are variables versus constants, and we can classify variables in different ways. These are all well described in the chapter, so I'm not going here to expand further on the different types of value of variables, but it is important for you to explore these and understand the difference between continuous and discrete variables, independent and dependent variables, as well as confounding variables. Let me give you some examples about research topics, research problems, and research questions. A research topic could be adverse childhood experiences and students' ability to self-regulate. What are adverse childhood experiences? We know that in many urban schools, children come to school with a high frequency of abuse and neglect and other experiences that are challenging in their day-to-day lives. And this research topic would set out to investigate whether this influences kids' ability to self-regulate in the classroom and in the school setting. A second broad topic could be using student-teacher relationships to increase student achievement. A third topic could be project-based learning and self-efficacy. And a fourth broad topic, which of course I have designed to lend itself to a qualitative research methodology, would be the daily experiences of DLBTQ students in middle schools. But all of these topics here are way too broadly stated for us to actually begin to conduct an investigation. So the next level here is to begin to clarify and get our problems into what we call a problem statement. So the first study might be paraphrased to: this study will examine the relationship between adverse childhood experiences and self-regulation of second grade students in an urban school. Second topic might be paraphrased to: the purpose of the study is to investigate if positive student-teacher relationships increase achievement in science among low-achieving high school students. The third research topic: the purpose of this study is to examine if project-based learning in 8th grade math classes increase students' self-efficacy. And the last, more qualitative in nature, the purpose of this qualitative study is to explore the social and educational experiences of DLBTQ middle school students. However, these research problems are still too vague for us in order to get a good research question. So here is the third level of narrowing and clarification. So first topic: what is the relationship between the number of adverse childhood experiences for urban second grade students and their ability to self-regulate? You're seeing that we now have narrowed down that it is an investigation about the number of adverse childhood experiences and their ability to self-regulate. Of course, both the dependent and independent variable here will have to be clarified in order for us to investigate the topic. Second research question: what is the influence of positive student-teacher relationship on achievement in science among low-achieving high school students? Here are three concepts of variables that must be identified as a next step. One, what do we mean by a positive student-teacher relationship? And can we actually find some kind of way of assessing a positive student-teacher relationship? Second construct that must be identified is that how are we going to measure science achievement? And third, what do we mean by low achieving high school students? So three areas that need to be clarified. This becomes part of the methodology as we move on to the next steps, but a good researchable question. Third research question: do 8th grade students' self-efficacy increase as a result of using project-based learning in math? I can see that there's a hypothesis there that I have left out, so I apologize for that. And the last research question is: how do DLBTQ middle school students perceive their social and educational experiences at school? So how do we regulate the size of research topic? It's typically, it's to really look at how many um, research articles do we need to review in order to get a good idea about what is already known about this research problem that we have. So here it says, Mertler says, foreseeing the possibility of reviewing 20 to 50 recent and related published research studies. I would probably say that would be for a master's thesis. That would be the number of articles that one should review. For a PhD, you might be looking at somewhere between 75 to 150 research articles. For this class, I would say, since there are 4 or 5 of you in each group, you will see that I have each of you will have to identify a minimum of 4 research articles related to your field. That means that you're going to have somewhere around 15 or 16 research articles that will come together and form your literature review. It is important also as a next step to organize the study. Think through and plan the possible study in your mind and then plan it on paper. And the key is the data must parallel the research question. We must be able to collect data that answers the question that we have articulated. So what does a research report format look like? Typically, there's an introduction. At times before the introduction, there is what we call the abstract that basically summarizes what this article is about. And then you have the introduction where you basically write why this is an important study and how it relates to existing research that is being done in the field. Second, there is a review of the related literature. Third, the methodology. Who were the participants? How did we observe them? What did we do to them? And what I mean, what did we do to them? Did we use a new instructional strategy? Did we give them different experiences? Did we interview them? What did we do? What is it that we are looking at that changed as a result of that? And how are we collecting data? Are we giving assessments? Are we doing observations? You all reflected on 3 research questions in chapter 2 that was about the data collection methodologies that could be used. Then we have the findings and the results. After we have collected the data, we begin to analyze the data, and that can be done in 3 major forms. We can analyze narrative information. Narrative information is what we use when we conduct qualitative research. We are basically analyzing the words that we heard or the experiences that we observed of the participants in the study. And we will talk in a later chapter about using a rigorous methodology to analyze narrative data. When we move over to the field of quantitative data, we are either using what we call descriptive statistics or inferential statistics. And we'll get back to that earlier. So now we have the data, we analyze the data, and we come up, we answer the question that was asked as our research question. So there's a link here. And then we have a conclusion. We make observations about what did we find? Did we find that there was a relationship between adverse childhood experiences and students' ability to self-regulate in the classroom? Did we find that students who were instructed in math in a flipped classroom methodology achieved higher scores on standardized tests than kids who were taught in a more traditional lecture form of setting? So here is an outline of the research, the format of a research report. You see the introduction gets more detailed, and then there is a review of the related literature. There's a methodology section, there's a timeline and a budget and the references for what you are doing in this class here. We will definitely not, most likely not have any budget related issues, references. This is probably the first time that I'll be having the opportunity to talk about that. I'm a stickler on APA style, so it is important that you get APA style correct and that you use peer feedback for one another to correct the APA style. And finally, as also outlined in the book, what are some of the ways that you can use technology to find research that is relevant to your topic? And here is an outline or a suggestion for some of the places where you can find information that is relevant to your study. Thank you so much.